Hi there, I'm Allison Moon and welcome to 90 Days of Self-Publishing, and today is day 21. I had my editorial meeting. It was the first one where we discussed the changes that she made in the book and those that I'm integrating. It was a wonderful meeting. We talked about some large developmental stuff, because she had some general overall impressions of the book, which was wonderful for me to get. And so she was able to offer some, actually they were fairly simple changes that will really help the overall shape of things. It's mostly like in the first act fleshing a couple of ideas out, adding a little bit more of the fantastic and the supernatural early on so that we understand what kind of world we're in. And again, this is a pretty simple switch. I'm not going to be having to rearrange things or, cut characters or whatever, which is a really good thing. But generally she says like the shape of the book is good. It just needs a little bit more fine-tuning here and there, which is wonderful. And we were also able to talk about some of just the line edits that she's been doing. I noticed when I was reading the first 88 pages that there were some bits that I really loved, and she just nailed it. And then there are other parts that really made me question her editing style. And that was an interesting thing until I realized that it was when she was taking things away, I loved what she was doing. When she was removing my words and kind of honing it, perfect. But when she was adding things, I really didn't always like those changes. And I realized it's because her writing style is very different from mine. So she would basically be adding in things that felt like they didn't really work in the voice of my story. Once I was able to realize that, it was actually a very simple fix. I was able to communicate with her a couple of things that she had been doing that I didn't really love, and she totally understood. And two of those things actually were wonderful because they helped illuminate my own flaws in my writing. I tend to write colloquially, which means, you can get away with a lot of stuff when you're just using like a talky voice. But when you are writing, you need to kind of avoid certain things like cliches. I've definitely have been finding myself using cliches, and I don't mean like large thematic cliches, but I mean like verbal cliches. A good example of this would be as big as a house, for instance. I don't actually use that one, but as big as a house is a really good example of a verbal cliche, because it doesn't really tell you anything because it's so well worn. People kind of take it for granted. So it doesn't evoke the kind of image that you probably want if you're talking about something that's as large as a house. You want to talk about something that's mass and scale and size, and maybe it's looming over, and I mean, this is a much more evocative way of describing something as opposed to the house. So that's a good example of the cliche. And then one of the other things that I found myself using was redundancies. Verbal redundancies they're very evasive. They don't always appear to you because, again, we take so many of these things for granted. One good example of a redundancy is had never seen before, or without another word to anyone. I actually wrote that one down. Without another word to anyone. That actually is redundant. Without another word or to anyone, but you don't need to say it twice. Same thing with had never seen before. She either had never seen it or she hadn't seen it before. Had never seen before is redundant. And these things, they are sneaky, right? Because they work their way into our language so much that it's easy for you to kind of overlook these things as you're writing a book, but as an editor, you want to catch that, you want to get rid of that, you want to tighten it, you want to go through word by word and make sure each word is essential. And this is what people are talking about when they say that you really have to make every word defend itself. You have to make every word prove its right to live in your book. And this is the way you do it. Word by word, line by line, having another pair of eyes see where your flaws are and have, to work collaboratively on that and to really excise all the chaff and to get down to just really the essentials. And that's what makes a book swift and tight and punchy. And that's what I need. So it's been really great to go through this process. I'm going to go back to page 1 and keep moving through over and over again, keep combing through and finding all these little things and getting them out. So that's it for today. Thanks for joining me. See you tomorrow.